all of our conferences, all of our sharing sessions have been with small crowds, so this is not unusual.
Not unusual.
So this just so you know, this is in part with the work we're doing with Durham Can. This is the process they use and do things. One, to help create their mission, but also they believe this process will revitalize your congregation. That by us identifying the issues that we care about and then addressing those issues, then we will help revitalize our congregation in this area. But at the same time, we'll give them guidance as to what we think is important to do to Durham. So this is really not, this is not a Durham Can thing. This is something that we in the outreach committee decided to do. We will file a report with Durham Can when we're finished, because that's what they asked us to do. And that report will help them choose what they want to do for Durham in the next year or so. So this is a part of a Durham Can, but they really think that this is a way for congregations to become more engaged in outreach activities. So with that in mind, they've asked us to focus on 3 questions. Or actually, we decided to add the first question, which is, what do you like about Durham? And we decided that we'd start off on a positive note. And then the second question is, what do you think needs to change? And then the third question is, are you passionate about those issues? And what that implies, if you say yes to that, is you may be asked to engage in that activity, in planning for and helping to get that particular activity underway, both here in Mount Bethel, but also in the larger community. I don't think what else I should say. Oh, yes, of course. So if somebody says, gee, I want to do that, I want to feed the poor, and somebody else has that same idea, then you should follow suit, because the numbers count. What Mount Bethel is interested in will be a reflection of the numbers. And so we've already gathered information. We don't have a way to consolidate that yet, but we've already gathered information from 3. You can come forward. We've already gathered information from our youth, and that was last Sunday. We've gathered it from 3 of our classes, adult classes that are going on. So we've already gathered some information. We haven't consolidated that information yet, and so we're going to have this session today where we get your information, and then we're going to consolidate that all and present that to the church at some point, and as well as present our top priorities to Durham Can. So, and that we need to finish that whole process with Durham Can by the middle of the month. So that's our timelines. We should find some time, our committee will find some time shortly to consolidate all the information we've had, make it available to the congregation, and then at the same time fill out the report that Durham Can has sent us a copy of to fill out. And Durham Can's interested, like I said, in 2 real things. What's important to us, and who is individually engaged in that activity and want to do work for it. Because their process is to spend time studying the issue, trying to figure out, like they cite as an example a city out west somewhere where there was 170 schools that they actually physically went in and visited every one of those schools and found what was physically wrong with them, and brought that to the attention of the mayor and the city council, because they weren't aware. Yeah, as much as you can believe that or not believe that, the city council wasn't aware. And once they became aware that there's no toilet paper in the bathrooms, we got to go fix that. And they had that community engaged in an activity to repair all the schools. So they got to first find the data, find the issue, then find the data, and then put it in a way that it can be presented to, your local politicians or whoever it's at. So that's kind of their process that they're following to go after issues that they can then study and figure out how to address appropriately to the politicians in the area to get resolution. Our process is to find out what we as a congregation are passionate about and figure out how we can either contribute to the Durham Can activity or take it on as our own. Any other questions on the process we're going through or what we're going to do with this data or anything like that? Again, our hope is that this becomes a tool that the outreach committee can use to help, not that we don't have a vital and important congregation, but this gives us something to, bring new life to our outreach activities. Questions, comments? So our process is to start by you telling us what you like about Durham.
So I'll start just to say one of the things I like about Durham is probably is the most multi-ethnic, multicultural place. So you can tell that from the housing, from the restaurants. It's just a much more flavorful compared to if I just step out, my apologies to people who live in Chapel Hill, but I mean, it tends to be the most mixed and interesting city in the area to live in. And it's not, so huge compared to like Raleigh or something like that, not so spread out.
I can add to that, it's not only multi-ethnic, multicultural, whatever, it's also welcoming into that culture. Well, I don't know that this is on. Oh, it is. It's also not just multicultural, multi-ethnic, but you feel welcomed into whatever you go into. Mm-hmm. So we came from Chicago. We never felt really welcomed into that community like we have here in just 2 years. So you get the exposure to all the other cultures and ethnicities with the welcoming that goes along with that.
To add to that, it's also got like a really strong counterculture movement in Durham that, whether that's you can be who you are or environmental conservation, that type of thing. That's what I love about Durham.
Any other thoughts? One of the ones that came up, now the way we've been recording some of this is it's in something called a jam board, which apparently, according to Kate and Dave, is something that's used in brainstorming in corporations. And so that's the tool we've used to record our previous ones. And if you don't have the access to that, we'll just let us know and we'll give that link out so you can see what other people have said in the church. One of the things that was on there was, in that regard, was Linda Alien and I attended a walk in downtown Durham that Durham Historical Society, I'm not quite sure what the right term is for that organization, puts on. And they walked around downtown Durham talking about all the racial events that occurred, racial justice events that occurred. And they spent a long time talking about Polly Murray, who apparently was a famous lawyer in this community, even to the point of influencing the Supreme Court in many cases. And so it was just a fascinating story to hear that Durham has this history of being a center for racial justice activities, and it was really interesting. If you haven't been on that tour, I encourage you to do it. Apparently, like every 3 months they do one. They probably have a different tour guide, and they probably all tell different stories. But so that was one.
Well, I think, as a like, I feel like Durham still cares about all those issues, all those types of different justice issues, and so I think that's important.
And the diversity of the arts here is really amazing. And it's, like in Chicago, I felt like it was more hidden. You had to go find it, and here it's like there. You can just see it everywhere, which is great.
I'm trying to think what was some of the other ones that are on there. All we got to do is find the page.
I like all the restaurants. I like Deepak, and like you said, I like Baldwin Auditorium and everything that comes to play at Baldwin Auditorium. The variety of arts, and the variety of schools. We were looking for schools for our children there were a lot of different choices.
So just FYI, this is what a Jamboard looks like. And your interest in schools, it's listed here. Outstanding colleges and community colleges and outstanding schools. So you're adding to something somebody has already said, which is good because that means that's a reaffirmation of what our views are. So this is what a Jamboard looks like, and what these are individual software-driven sticky notes, as they call them. Let's see. Restaurants was mentioned. Durham Bulls, and somebody even said Mount Bethel Church, because after all, we're talking about Bethel people here. Yeah. Any other thoughts on what you like about Durham?
I love that Durham is honest about who they are. You know, we're honest about our history. We're honest about our struggles.
Right.
We're, kind of proud of our grit. But we want to work on it a little bit.
See, you should have moved up.
I'm never going to sit in the back.
You didn't realize the church was so big, did you?
So the next question is, what needs or issues should Durham address to be a better place for everyone? Sidewalks. They need repair, they need more of them.
The violence.
The violence.
Probably gang-related, but the violence.
Oh, did you put that on there? More sidewalks? I was wondering what that meant.
Downstairs.
I think food and food security for a lot of folks is an issue.
Right.
I mean, knowing it from the public educational system, the number of schools that are Title I and that kind of stuff.
I'm going to say something that is not concrete. I don't think I need to. Well, I'm going to say something that's not, okay, that is not concrete, but I really feel I think we need to get back to looking not, and all these other issues are really, really important, but when I was voting, and I did vote, and this isn't just for Durham, it's for our area, but when I was voting, I was looking at the issues, and I'm sure most of us were, and what the candidates were, what their issues, their stands on the important issues. And one of the ones that just stuck out like a sore thumb to me, that none of the candidates is all about abortion. It's about the hot topics right now. And other things, which are very, very important. But none of them were the environment. No one had that as an issue. And in my opinion, that addresses all of us, all genders,
Right.
all ethnicities, every variation. And I don't understand why people don't think about that. I mean, there's so many things, and gosh, there's so many needs in this world. There's food needs, there's needs for justice in terms of your ethnicity or your sexual orientation or whatever else. But some of these environmental issues that are in our faces right now are not being addressed, and that is something that we all benefit from, all of us. And so I think in whatever way, shape, or form, what I wish we would do is, I'm not saying, you know, any of these other issues are not important, they are. But they're, I really think we need to look more at environmental issues in Durham.
We did work with Durham Trees, and we are continuing to follow their website to see when they want to plant more trees, and that's a step in the right direction. It's not the issue of the environment is such a bigger thing than just planting trees. And planting trees is important though, because evidence shows that if you have trees in a community, which is mostly, if you go back, you know, you look at the areas, they're mostly, you know, upper middle class and upper areas that have trees in it. You go into Durham, guess who doesn't have the trees? The poor. And they need the shade, they need the trees, and that would help. It wouldn't address the bigger issue, which is environmental issues, but environmental justice locally is something that we could put on the table and
Right.
address.
And I also, you all were the ones who told me about and then Sarah and I talked about what we could do as a church to be more, that the Presbyterian Church USA has this Earth Care
Right.
thing. And it's just making people start thinking about it.
Yeah, that came up in our last buildings and grounds.
Right.
And they're hopeful to move in that direction, so.
Like, for instance, Leslie was freezing today. I freeze all the time in this church. And sometimes I feel like, is this necessary for us to
Be this comfortable.
yeah, well, I'm not, but the point is I'm not, this is selfish, but I'm not comfortable. And so, you know, that is something that we need to look at. I mean, some other people are perfectly comfortable, but what we need to do is, I think, just take a look at all the issues. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa.
But I think into that, and I know we've talked about this because we're both big on like no plastic, no whatever. We need to stop, like if we have a big congregational meal, whatever, some of us can wash dishes, but we don't need all the paper, plastic, throwaway
Right.
stuff.
Durham actually has a great company called Green to Go, which will
Do that for you. It will provide you with the silverware and plates you need, and it'll come pick them up and wash them for you. I mean, for a price, obviously, but that's things like that we can invest in. Yeah.
Does anyone know if there is any recycling bins in this church? Because I have not been able to find one for one plastic bag. There's one. But that's not in the kitchen where people are getting water bottles and things.
Well, anyway, that is a really, in my mind, it's a really, really important thing that we need to look at as a church, and then, you know, we can say, that's what we're interested in is for payments. I don't know. Am I doing it wrong?
Yeah. Any other issues? I'm keeping you from football, so.
And again, just a reminder, you know, we got involved with CAN because sometimes it's a way for us, sometimes we're interested in something like when you say, you know, providing affordable housing or food, you say, well, how do you do it? I mean, we do have some specific things like urban ministry meals, but it's a way for us to be involved and allow us to get involved in things where we may not know the mechanisms. So CAN, you know, can collect all the ideas, can come in concrete things, and then they can pull us like the resources. But CAN, they say this, that first of all, when they consolidate ultimately down to this whole list, maybe your top thing of interest doesn't show up, that doesn't mean you forget about it. You keep bringing it up. And as a church, to us, if we get involved with CAN, but maybe one of the ideas that came up the most, or one that we feel strongly about, is not something that CAN is going to be pursuing this next year or so, that doesn't mean we can. We can go on our own and
Right.
do our own thing too.
Right. So just so you know, in 2020, when the CAN organization did this, the issues that came up were affordable housing. That was the center of their little chart here. Now that was 2020. Who knows what they're going to do this time? But the center was affordable housing. Education was up next to that, and health. Gun violence and safety made it on their list. Jobs, food insecurity, and criminal justice. So those are the things that in 2020 bubbled to the top in their charts. And history is often a repeat of the past, so they might still have some of these same issues. Certainly, some of those same issues are on our chart. They were on their chart in 2020. And then they go through a process of deciding which one of these is the one they're going to go after, because they don't have infinite resources. So they decide which one or two or maybe three. We're new to CAN, so we're learning as we go, so we'll see. Because we have to give our report to them mid-November, and then I think they've scheduled a meeting in December to actually do the selection of from all the issues that come before them.
And then they will pull people in to say, okay, now you have this idea, now how do you put it into something concrete that you're actually going to do, whether it's bugging city government, whether, there's what actions, how would you actually do this to turn it into something physical and concrete?
We have affordable housing.
Yes.
Another thing that's just a side piece of the environment part, you mentioned just in passing, is just environmental justice. And I don't know haven't been here long enough to know if there are issues like that in Durham in terms of just industrialization and neighborhoods and how those things overlap. And we all know that poor neighborhoods end up in, next to the power plants and industrial parks and all kinds of other places. And that'd be a piece of that environment that's kind of its own unique animal. Is just how, I don't know how segregated Durham is in terms of those kind of putting those pieces in all the same lower income places, right?
Yeah, you should go to the history walks, because Durham has an interesting and complex history, as we all do. Durham was, because the industry was manufacturing, although it happened to be cigarettes, but it afforded blacks a steady income. If you go to some other places like farming and shipping, the blacks there was part-time. You only had a job if there was a ship to unload, so they didn't have the steady income. So Durham is the center of the Black Wall Street. The first company to offer life insurance to blacks was here. The first bank that was fully staffed by blacks was here. It just has a fascinating history like that. Then along comes the need to build a highway between here to there, and they pick it right through the center of the rich middle-class area that the blacks people have destroyed their homes and destroyed their cash value in their homes because it had been redlined. So the values were low, so they could get it cheaply. So Durham has a complex but yet interesting history, as we all do, about housing and about affordable housing and what's available.
Just an aside and just a fact, following up on what Dave just said, is that because I'm interested in this and have been for some time, the environmental justice part, I've been watching some videos and other stuff. And one thing that Durham does is we don't have a landfill anymore. All of our garbage goes to Sampson County. And so that's what they do every day. They pick up the garbage and they take it to another county. And they pay, we pay for them to have our garbage dumped in their county. But I don't, you know, that's not right. That's not right. You know, and so that's just something. I think that's an injustice.
And also just reminder to people on live stream, basically my email address and my cell phone number is on there. You can see it on your screen. So if you want to text anything now, so I can bring it up during the middle of this discussion, please do so. Or you can do it afterwards if you come up and you have some thoughts that didn't get captured here.
Yeah, that's what's on.
So it's showing up on the live stream.
It's on
We
the-
just wrote it down by hand, but it's showing up on live stream.
Okay. So what are you passionate about before you walk out?
Education. Yeah, I mean, I'm passionate about the environment stuff too. And Leslie's comment about the great schools, there are great schools, but Durham Public Schools, you know, have had a lot of wealthy people flee from them.
Right.
So that's an area that I feel passionate about too.
Put their names down. Which is, yeah, sorry they had to leave, but that's what this is, you know, go when you need to go. So we need to transition to I was half joking when I said, what are you passionate about? But we need to transition that. I gather your passion is environmental justice, however that gets defined. There's been a passion expressed for education, educational justice in Durham with all the you know, the different things that have gone on inside the Durham schools.
I would say both of those two. And I think a piece of the schools, in talking about the you know, poverty and stuff with kids, is food. And we've seen that. Lisa worked a lot with kids, with taking care of providing, you know, food for kids. Like,
Right.
When it's a half day of school and they don't get lunch there, or when they have their days off, when they, or even the weekends when they may not get fed if they're reliant on that food at school for their daily nourishment. So I think the food thing,
The food justice.
and the schools really ties together. I mean, that's a big chunk.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Well, this is hot. What we did at our other church is we adopted a school, and they identified 10 or 12 kids who were in food insecurity at home.
Right.
And every weekend, we put a bag of food together that they took home to feed themselves
Yeah,
for the weekend.
Yeah, we're not at that stage
No,
yet. What
but-
we are doing is for our we're doing our Christmas
A few schools
boxes.
do have that sort of thing going on.
Yes.
I do know that.
Yeah, and what I know with other churches, and we can look into that. But what we are doing is we've for the past several years have been putting together Christmas morning boxes, and we're targeting organizations and a local school that needs something like that.
Yeah,
And those boxes are also available if you want to give them to your neighbors. But so that's what this box has been out here. We've been collecting food, pancake breakfast for them to have on for Christmas morning, so they can have games for the children to play and food to eat without any outside. You know, all they need is water, and we're providing everything else they need for a meal that morning and games for the kids to play and stuff like that. Crafts.
So I'm passionate about a lot of things. What I don't ever get really excited about, and that's just the way my personality works, which Amy knows, I'm like, let's do it now, is these long-term, like, let's get on a committee and talk about it and get to something later. But I think there are a bunch of things we could do, like for the environment just within this building, or for food insecurity within this building. Like so those kinds of things I would be passionate about doing more than like, let's talk about environmental justice that's gonna happen for the next 10 years. That's not me.
Yeah.
But something quick
but-
like we can do now.
But
I'm
if
into.
you don't address that
I'm
now,
not saying you shouldn't address it. I said
Yeah, right.
I'm not the person to
Right.
do it.
So when the Buildings and Grounds says we're going to form a committee to do, a committee to do, where'd you write it down? Earth Care Church And what step do we need? Because I don't know if you go to the website in the PCUSA, you look up Earth Care Church, they give steps you got to do right now before you're even considered. You got to get through this hurdle, then we'll consider you. And then when you get through the next hurdle, you'll be approved, and you can hang up your sign and get all the publicity that out of that. But then you got to keep at it. Then you got to identify so it's like, it's the best of all worlds for somebody like you, because it's got the list of here's what you got to do, and then here to maintain that status, you got to keep doing it.
Just speaking, since you've been speaking of several denominational type, one of the big things in the denomination is being a Matthew 25 church. Have we talked about that, or are we one, or
No.
do we?
No. In fact, I don't think we are. I don't think Mount Bethel is anything with the presbytery like those. Yes, that's true.
I mean, I'm not sure everybody knows, it's really about just addressing those issues where he said, I was hungry and you fed me, I was thirsty, you gave me something to eat, I was a stranger and you welcomed me, trying to fulfill that mission.
Right. And there's also in the presbytery, in PCUSA, called a church, I forget the exact word, but it's a church focusing on hunger issues in the community, in your community. So you can get, they have all sorts of things that churches can strive to be named as. I would think if you become a Matthew 25 church, you have to be all those other things too, but that doesn't seem to be it's working. You can become a food church or an environmental church, and while those may help you become a Matthew 25 church, that's yet something else altogether. So. Exactly.
So the Matthew 25 initiative has 3 different foci, and if a church signs on, they can pick one of those. And it's dismantling structural racism, eradicating systemic poverty, and being a vital church, a vital congregation. But one of the really cool parts about the Matthew 25 initiative is that other churches and presbyteries that have signed on, whatever focus they pick, you're supposed to share your church's success stories in one central location on the PCUSA's website. And so so then it becomes a resource bank for other churches. And so, we could, without even being a Matthew 25 congregation, which I think is worth exploring anyways, but we can go and look at churches that are in similar settings as Mount Bethel, similar church sizes in other cities like Durham, and say, what have they done? What have they seen has made a big impact on, children living in poverty in their, middle-sized, urban, diverse city. And then, if we picked something, we can also then share our success with others too. But it's signing on, it's committing yourself, but it's also helping become a resource for other congregations too, and learning from each other. And I think that's part of what CAN is also doing too, is looking at what other cities similar to Durham have done and what we can do to help other cities. So I think the more we can share resources and share success stories, the better. I mean, everyone just benefits from that.
By the way, I also lead the anti-racism class, and I'm not going to stop that. So I'm passionate about racism justice and trying to figure that out. And my pastor in Texas, who is kind of a mentor to me in many ways, he told me, as long as there's one other person on that Zoom call with you, you don't cancel it. So it'll keep going. I don't know what So it doesn't really show up on the list, but that's my commitment, is to keep that class going over, And if you're not on the email list, you're welcome. Let me know, and I'll put you on it, and then you can decide. We meet every other Monday. But anyway, any other thoughts, comments, suggestions? Any other passions you want to go after? I mean, we'll put this together with our committee, We'll put this all together with the other inputs that we received from the other groups, including the children, and we'll see where we stand and go from there. Do you get anything from the online community?
No, but we have plenty here.
Yep.
All right.
Anybody want to pray us out? Peter, you're the chair of the committee.
So we have a professional over here. All right. Thank you, Lord, for this time to share and to actually take some of our ideas and thoughts and hopefully put them into action. Because ultimately, we only have one planet. We're all one family together, and we all have to look after each other. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.